A morning like any other. He rose from his chair, reached slowly for the newspaper, then paused midway. Not because of any sharp pain, it was just his left knee seemed to take an extra second to agree to move. She noticed it, but said nothing. Silently, she watched him step toward the door, his shoulder slightly tilted to maintain balance. His heel touched the ground as if something were holding it back. Not strong enough to make him complain, but clear enough for her to see that his walk was no longer the same. Is it age? Perhaps. But in her heart, a quiet question echoed. Has time truly taken his legs? Or is there something else I've overlooked? Because he still tried, still watered the garden, still carried her grocery bags. But she knew. Something was quietly causing his legs to weaken, not in a day or a week, but in every meal, every seemingly harmless food choice. He still ate fruit every morning, the kind both believed was healthy. A few grapes, some banana slices, occasionally pineapple or mango if she found good ones at the market. Good for the heart, he once read somewhere. Natural, less sugar than pastries, she used to believe. But could it be that these familiar fruits were the reason his knee was becoming harder to move, making his steps heavier without anyone noticing? Aging doesn't come solely from the years. It comes from the small things, accumulating daily, that sometimes the most loving person silently fails to notice. And perhaps the only one close enough to recognize that change is her. You might still believe, like many others, fruit is the symbol of health. This morning's fruit plate was still carefully prepared by her, as always, with familiar choices. A handful of seedless grapes, a few slices of ripe banana, a piece of pineapple to refresh him after the meal. All clean, natural, unprocessed, no artificial sugars. So why, despite maintaining a healthy diet, does he feel his legs slowing down with the years? Not a sharp pain, but a vague sluggishness, as if each step requires a bit more effort. Each time standing up needs a pause to catch his breath. Each stare a reminder that something is wearing down. Have you ever looked closely at this morning's fruit plate? Not to check for freshness, but to ask yourself, could it be that these sweet slices are contributing to your husband withdrawing, walking less, joking less, inviting you to the garden less on weekend afternoons? The answer may lie in something few consider. Natural sugars in fruit, mild acids, or the way a body over 60 no longer processes them like at 30 or 40. It's still the same banana, but his body now reacts differently. Still the same pineapple, but weakened joints can no longer filter those small acids as before. And still the same grapes, sweet, easy to eat, but silently causing uric acid to accumulate in his knees, his ankles. She didn't do anything wrong, but perhaps it's time to reconsider. What is healthy for someone over 60 may no longer be the same as before. Each piece of fruit from now on is not just a snack, it's a choice. For his legs to continue taking her on walks around the lake, or for him to choose to sit back in silence. Mrs. Elizabeth has been retired for nearly 10 years. The small house in the suburbs of Minneapolis now holds just the two of them, quietly together, steadily together. Each morning, she wakes up a bit earlier, not in a hurry, just enough time to prepare the breakfast tray properly. 2 slices of whole grain bread, a cup of unsweetened black tea, and a plate of fresh fruit, carefully sliced. Every morning, grapes are indispensable. He likes them because they're easy to eat, refreshing, and good for the heart, as he often says. She usually chooses seedless ones, washes them clean, drains them, and arranges each grape on the plate as if placing the final kind gestures of a long life. He never asks, never complains, just nods slightly and eats them all. A simple habit, needing no explanation, no change. Until one morning in mid-March, the sky clear but cold, he stepped onto the back porch, newspaper in hand as always. But just as he stepped down the first stair, he stopped. A soft groan escaped very quickly. Then he stood straight as if to hide it from himself. She heard it. Not loud, not clear, but enough for her to know something was different. He didn't complain. Still sat reading the paper, still praised the tea's aroma, still lifted his right leg before sitting down. But she could no longer see it as a small matter, not because of a groan, but because it came from the man who used to climb ladders to change light bulbs without a chair, who once walked miles with her in the old park, and never once sighed. That afternoon, she stood before the familiar produce section at the local supermarket. Still the plump grapes wrapped in red mesh bags. Her hand reached out as usual, but then stopped. For the first time in years, she asked herself, "Am I choosing right for him?" The body after 60 is no longer like in middle age. It doesn't speak through fevers or sharp pains, but whispers through slowness, slight fatigue, the stiffness in the knees each time standing up. These changes don't come from aging suddenly, but from within, where blood flows, where tiny capillaries begin to weaken, where insulin no longer listens as before. Older adults often tend toward mild insulin resistance, meaning the body doesn't process sugar as efficiently as when younger. Each time eating something sweet, even naturally sweet like grapes, bananas or mangoes, blood sugar levels rise faster, higher and longer. This reaction seems harmless, but repeated, it causes chronic inflammation in small capillaries, especially in the legs. Capillaries are tiny blood vessels delivering oxygen and nutrients to the farthest tissues. When inflamed, the flow is obstructed. The result, muscles lack nutrients, lack oxygen, leading to heaviness, leg fatigue, slight swelling, unexplained aches. And the worst part, the person feeling it often doesn't know why. Additionally, the body after 60 reduces nitric oxide production, a natural molecule that helps blood vessels dilate, keeping blood flow smooth. Some fruits, like berries, avocados, or beets, can stimulate the body to produce more nitric oxide. But others, rich in simple sugars, acids, or special enzymes, cause blood vessels to constrict, putting pressure on an already fragile vascular system. The important thing isn't to stop eating fruit, but to understand not all are suitable for a changed body. And the first person to realize that sometimes isn't the doctor, but the wife, the one who prepares the fruit plate each morning, who hears the sigh after dinner, who sees her husband no longer walks as far as before. Science isn't distant. It's on the side of the observant, and sometimes that's her. No one gave her a medical degree. No one told her to monitor every slight swelling in his ankle or count the times he sat down using both hands instead of one as before. But she still did it, not out of duty, but out of love, because after decades together, she's the only one who sees every smallest change he doesn't mention. He remains courteous, maintains a steady rhythm of life. He doesn't ask for help, doesn't complain. And that makes her need to be more observant. No need to ask, "Does your leg hurt?" Because she knows he'll just smile. "It's nothing, just a bit stiff." But she notices how he chooses to sit closer to the door to avoid walking much, how he rests his leg slightly tilted to reduce pressure on his right knee. Those small details are the silent cries he doesn't voice. And so she starts from the nearest place, the fruit plate. No need to overhaul the diet, no sudden changes. She just replaces one item at a time, swaps grapes for berries, reduces pineapple, adds a few slices of soft avocado. She doesn't explain, doesn't ask him to monitor or keep a journal. She just quietly observes, as a wife cares not through theory, but through intuition. Gradually, he stops pausing midway up the stairs, less tossing at night due to cramps. One time, when standing up from the chair without using his hands, he said softly, "Lately my legs feel less stiff." And she just smiled. "Maybe because you're sleeping better." But in her heart, she knew it was that silent choice, that small change, that paved the way for his legs to walk more steadily. People often think significant roles require grand actions, but after 60, the greatest role is sometimes the timely silence. Not curing illness, just choosing right, and believing that with enough patience, his legs will still walk beside her on the path they've journeyed together all their lives. Pineapple is a fruit many older adults in the US love. Sweet, refreshing, juicy. Rich in vitamin C, easy to store, easy for breakfast. Some husbands have been accustomed to thin pineapple slices in the morning as a promise of health. But what no one mentions is, pineapple, though natural, carries two downsides, sweet on the tongue but sharp in the bloodstream. First is bromelain, a distinctive enzyme in pineapple. In low doses, bromelain can aid digestion and provide mild anti-inflammatory support. But for older adults, especially those with weak capillaries or on medications like aspirin, warfarin, bromelain can disrupt absorption, increase blood vessel permeability, leading to small capillary inflammation. That's why, after several days of continuous pineapple consumption, some people begin to feel a burning sensation in the knees, tight calves, dull ankle pain when walking. Second, pineapple contains high levels of natural sugar, especially fructose, which causes blood sugar to spike quickly after eating. For older adults, insulin response has diminished. When glucose suddenly rises in the blood, Small capillaries delivering blood to the knees, feet, are silently damaged. The result? Reduced blood circulation, muscles lack oxygen, leading to heaviness, leg fatigue, numbness after standing long or climbing stairs. Lastly, the high acidity in pineapple. This acid doesn't just affect digestion, but also irritates mildly inflamed joints. For those with a history of arthritis, pineapple can increase pain in the ankles, knees or hips, especially in the morning after waking up. The truly concerning thing about pineapple isn't its immediate side effects. It's the quiet accumulation over time. No one suspects that a fresh fruit, sugar-free, unprocessed, could be the very reason their husband, now over 60, has started walking more slowly, no longer initiating afternoon strolls together. That's why she doesn't need to eliminate pineapple altogether. But she does need to know when it should be present, and more importantly, when it should be left off his fruit plate. Because sometimes the sweetest thing comes from knowing when to hold back, not for taste, but for his legs. Few fruits are as beloved and trusted as bananas, soft, sweet, easy to digest. From athletes to those with sensitive stomachs, bananas are often seen as perfectly safe. Many husbands still start their day with a banana, sometimes out of habit, sometimes as a quiet way to prove they're still strong. But few know that bananas, if consumed by the wrong person at the wrong time, can be a subtle disguise. Bananas are rich in easily absorbed carbohydrates, especially glucose and fructose, which cause blood sugar to spike quickly after eating. For younger people, the body adjusts easily, using the sugar swiftly. But for someone over 60, insulin response is slower, metabolism more sluggish. Excess sugar lingers in the blood longer, leading to low-level inflammation in the small capillaries, especially those supplying the legs, knees, and feet. The result: heavy legs, fatigue, tension in the calves when standing, slight ankle swelling, yet no one suspects the banana. People still believe bananas boost energy, provide potassium, prevent cramps. That belief isn't wrong, but it's no longer suited to a post-60 body. Few realize that bananas can also cause water retention, especially when eaten with salty foods or in those with mild heart issues. Retaining water increases internal vascular pressure, making joints swell and harder to move, particularly in the afternoon or after a high-carb meal. For an older man, the banana, once considered a companion, may dull mild pain signals, yet slowly wear down flexibility in his legs without anyone noticing. Mrs. Elizabeth used to believe bananas were the right choice, until she saw him begin to walk more slowly after breakfast. And then she swapped the banana for half a ripe avocado, lower in sugar, rich in healthy fats, anti-inflammatory. He didn't question it, but after a few weeks, he started walking around the garden more often, not necessarily because of the avocado, but because she chose to make a change out of understanding, not fear. No one suspects the tiny grapes, easy to eat, easy to buy, marketed as rich in antioxidants, heart healthy. He still ate grapes as a familiar dessert, usually at lunch when she brought out a chilled fruit plate. Sometimes she'd catch him picking up a few more while watching baseball. Grapes are tasty, mildly sweet, convenient, but like many sweet things, they can hide a danger few recognize. Grapes contain high levels of fructose, a natural sugar that bypasses digestion and goes straight to the liver. When this fructose exceeds the liver's capacity, it gets converted into uric acid. If the kidneys can't flush it out completely, uric acid builds up in the joints, especially in smaller ones in the feet, like the big toe, ankles, knees. The result? Dull aching, sharp pain when standing up, or a tight discomfort after meals. Some think they have mild gout without realizing that their daily grape plate is quietly fueling inflammation. The pain doesn't come immediately. It creeps in over weeks, months, through every step, making him favor one leg when putting on shoes, shortening his evening walks because my legs feel a bit heavy. The danger of grapes lies in their harmlessness. No tough skin, no sharp tartness, no bloating, just mildly sweet and soft, which is why people eat more than they realize. And that silent sugar keeps adding up day by day. Mrs. Elizabeth once lovingly washed grapes, dried them, and arranged them neatly in a sealed container, a habit full of care. But after noticing him limping in the mornings, she stopped buying grapes. She didn't say anything, just replaced them with a few blackberries, a slice of green apple with low sugar. And strangely, he didn't ask, but a few weeks later, she noticed he was slipping on his shoes more quickly. Grapes aren't bad, but for a body that's changed after 60, real kindness sometimes means knowing when to stop before it's too late. Few fruits evoke the American summer like watermelon. Its sweet refreshment, its juicy crunch, its vibrant red under the sun. Watermelon often appears at backyard BBQs, park picnics, Independence Day celebrations. It's tied to childhood, to unhurried summer days. And because it's over 90% water, many, him included, believe watermelon is both hydrating and healthy. What's wrong with it? No grease, no added sugar, no need to cook. But behind that deep green rind, watermelon hides something the body after 60 no longer handles well. The issue lies in its glycemic index, GI, a measure of how much a food spikes blood sugar. Watermelon has a very high GI, almost equal to white bread or jelly beans. Once eaten, blood sugar soars quickly, a particular risk for older adults with mild insulin resistance or slow metabolism. The consequence? Blood becomes thicker with sugar, forcing tiny capillaries, especially in the feet and legs, to work harder. And when circulation can't keep up, you'll notice heavy legs after a summer lunch, tightness around the ankles during an afternoon walk, persistent fatigue even after standing at the sink for just a few minutes. These are signs of mild swelling, microcirculatory decline, and a body quietly struggling with what seems like an innocent fruit. Worse, because watermelon rarely causes fullness, people often eat 2 or 3 bowls, unknowingly consuming more sugar than a can of soda. He used to love watermelon in the summer, large chilled slices after gardening. She used to rinse it well, chill it with ice, and cut it into even pieces for him. But recently she noticed whenever there's watermelon in the fridge, he tends to lounge longer in the armchair after meals, not because he's full, but because his legs feel heavy. So she replaced it with chilled blackberries or a few blueberries, lower in sugar, better for circulation. He still ate them, without questions, without complaint. And that afternoon he went out to the garden, without her prompting. Because sometimes it's not the water, but the sugar hidden in that water that slows down the steps of the one you love. A glass of orange juice in the morning, for many older Americans, isn't just a routine, but a symbol of a healthy lifestyle. He was the same. Each morning, beside a slice of toast and a boiled egg, the orange juice was always prepared by her. The citrusy tang made him feel like he was starting the day right. But there's something she hadn't considered. That gentle sourness comes from citric acid, a natural acid found in citrus fruits. For the young, it's negligible, but for someone over 60, connective tissues, joints, and synovial linings have thinned and weakened. And any irritant can trigger a lingering inflammatory response. Citric acid, once in the bloodstream, doesn't stop at digestion. It penetrates soft tissues around joints, already bearing small age-related damage. For those with arthritis, mild joint pain, or unexplained chronic inflammation, orange juice can worsen symptoms even without immediate pain. Common signs include stiff knees after waking up, mild hip discomfort after long sitting, ankle tingling when the weather is cold, and most puzzling, an all-over leg fatigue without a clear cause. Additionally, oranges contain natural sugars and can spike blood sugar after breakfast, triggering widespread cellular-level inflammation, affecting the small vessels that deliver blood to the feet and joints. Mrs. Elizabeth used to think orange juice was a safe choice, but then she noticed, on days he drank orange juice in the morning, by afternoon he'd rest longer, go outside less, walk less. Not out of laziness, but because his body no longer felt as nimble. So she switched it out for half a red grapefruit or a few slices of ripe kiwi, lower in acid, rich in vitamin C and potassium. He didn't complain. In fact, he said the flavor was refreshingly different. And from that day, she noticed. He started going out to the garden earlier, not because his health transformed overnight, but because his joints no longer quietly protested. Because sometimes it's not what you add, but what you choose to stop, that helps the body heal. Among all fruits, perhaps none appears more wholesome than a green apple. Mrs. Elizabeth used to keep a few in a bowl right next to the lavender pot on the kitchen counter, clean, neat, with a glossy peel. He liked biting into them, crisp, tart, and filling. Less sugar than red apples, he once said, and she nodded, with no reason to doubt. But what few notice, that distinct tartness in green apples comes from malic acid, a natural organic acid that can quietly contribute to joint stiffness or mild groin or knee pain in older adults. Malic acid is beneficial for the young, boosting energy and aiding digestion. But for the elderly, when gut linings are thinner and joint tissues no longer provide the same support, malic acid can become a mild irritant, causing low-level inflammation, especially in large joints like the hips, knees, or sacroiliac joint. Common signs include a slight groin tightness when stepping up, a catching sensation in the knee when standing after meals, mild hip pain when sitting for long, yet not severe enough to warrant a doctor visit. Additionally, though less sweet, green apples still contain fructose. When eaten at night or between meals, they can still cause blood sugar fluctuations, increasing endothelial inflammation, impacting the tiny vessels in the legs and tissues around joints. Mrs. Elizabeth didn't change things right away. She just began observing. On days he ate green apples, he'd sit longer in the evening, brace himself when standing up, walk slower to the bedroom. On days she replaced them with a few slices of soft, ripe pear. He stood more easily, even asking, "Do we still have some peppermint tea, dear?" No one suspects green apples, the symbol of a healthy snack, could be the reason each step grows heavier. But for a body that has seen many winters, many recurring small pains, even the wholesome things must be re-examined with understanding eyes. There was no official conversation, no banned food list, no bold warnings, no family meeting to discuss leg health. It was simply that, one morning, on his fruit plate, the grapes were gone. In their place were a few small, dark berries, slightly tart, but gentle. The next day, the banana slices disappeared too, replaced by soft, ripe avocado sprinkled with chia seeds. No one said a word, but they both noticed. She didn't explain. He didn't ask. Maybe because, after so many years together, the most important things no longer needed to be said. He still finished everything, just like always, but began to look more closely at the fruit plate in front of him. She quietly observed his steps in the hallway, the way he sat down without using his hands, the afternoons he ventured into the garden earlier than usual. And then, one day, when he stood up from the table without pausing to rub his knee, she knew something was changing. Not thanks to medication, not because of a new exercise, just through a quiet, persistent, and deeply thoughtful shift in the way she chose each piece of fruit every morning. At this age, no one needs grand declarations, no longer expecting to be young again or strong like before. They just want to maintain a familiar rhythm, gentler, more comfortable, with less pain. And if they can still walk around the neighborhood together without needing to rest midway, then that's already a gift. He never said thank you for those changes, but when he picked up the breakfast tray, looked at her and smiled, then said, "These blackberries are sweet today," she knew she had made the right choice. Not to cure anything, just to listen. No words needed, just action, a little at a time. Because there's a kind of care, wordless, without fanfare, that only a lifelong partner can give. Mrs. Elizabeth never thought of herself as someone who could heal. She's not a nutritionist, hasn't read every study on uric acid, nitric oxide or blood sugar. She's just a wife who's lived beside him for nearly 40 years, long enough to sense when his body is responding, however quietly. And then the changes began to show, not loudly, not clearly, but just enough to ease her heart. One morning he passed through the living room, no longer dragging his feet. Another time he sat down at the dining chair without bracing his hands. One afternoon she heard his footsteps returning from the backyard, faster, steadier, stronger. No remedy had brought this about, just a string of small choices, swapping grapes for blackberries, less pineapple, more avocado, no more oranges, a bit of kiwi instead. And most importantly, she said nothing, because sometimes men after 60 don't need to be corrected, they just need to feel trusted. When a wife chooses the right fruit, not to control but to support, what he feels isn't just lightness in his legs, but in his heart. No longer burdened with proving he's not getting weaker, no longer fearing he's becoming a burden. Instead, he feels reassured, knowing someone is walking quietly beside him, wisely, gently, and with deep compassion. Care doesn't mean replacement. And understanding each other after 60 no longer comes through big words or actions, but through each slice of fruit chosen in the morning, each silent glance of observation, each soft smile when seeing the other walk steadily. He doesn't need to be fixed, he just needs to be seen, in the way only she is tender enough to do. Have you ever asked yourself, what makes a marriage last? It's not just love, not only responsibility, but something deeper, the ability to keep walking beside each other, not just in spirit, but in every step. And at this age, each of his steps has become something worth watching. Some days he stood up more slowly. Some days she heard a faint breath when he crossed the backyard. No one said anything, but in her heart a quiet worry stirred. What if one day he can't walk beside her anymore? Not because he left, but simply because he couldn't walk. People often say, staying healthy after 60 is the job of doctors, medicine and exercise. But she knows not everything is written in a prescription. Some things come from daily choices made out of love, not commands. She revised every fruit he ate each morning, not to control, but to preserve the steps that were slowing down. No need to ask, why are you walking slower? She just swapped grapes for blackberries. No need to push him to exercise. She just removed the pineapple, added a few slices of avocado. She wasn't trying to make him as strong as before. She just wanted him light enough to still want to walk beside her. And then, when they stepped out of the house on a Saturday afternoon, he said, "Shall we take the long way through the park?" That sentence might not sound like much to others, but to her it was the most heartfelt love confession after all their years together. Because walking side by side into their 70s doesn't come from medicine, it comes from the way she chooses fruit each morning. Not a grand gesture, not a dramatic sacrifice, just a quiet habit, full of clarity and patience. And that alone, that's real health. A kind of health not measured by lab results, but by feet that still want to walk toward each other every day. Health isn't a destination. Health is what allows people to still be there for one another, not just in awareness, but in movement. Not just someone to live with, but someone to walk with. There was a time when, each time he stepped down the front stairs, she would step ahead, not to lead, but to extend her hand. The grip wasn't tight, not rushed, just firm enough for him to place his hand in, finding a bit of support. No one said it out loud, but they both understood. His legs weren't the same. She wasn't saddened, just more careful, adjusting his slippers every morning, taking the longer path when she knew the steps were slippery, and most of all, adjusting the fruit plate every day. No one else knew how crucial that small act was, except her, because she believed if one grape could slow a step, then one berry, one slice of pear could help bring it back. And then one day she opened the door and found him already there, placing his hand on the railing, stepping down ahead of her, not wobbling, not sighing, just one simple step. But she knew it was the step of a body recovering, of a man wanting to be beside her again, not to be helped, but to walk with her. Nothing miraculous had happened, no strange remedy, no magic from a clinic, just a patient wife, placing each slice of fruit on a plate every morning, hoping that if she couldn't stop time, she could at least slow the drifting apart. Because a supportive hand doesn't always mean guiding someone along. Sometimes it's simply the hand that chooses the right thing when the other person can't yet do it for themselves. That afternoon was as peaceful as any other. The air was crisp, soft golden light streaming through the kitchen window. Mrs. Elizabeth had no grand plans, just cut half a ripe avocado, placed it on a small porcelain plate beside a cup of mint tea, his favorite around 3 p.m. No garnish, no label, no suggestion. She simply set it gently on the table and returned to folding laundry. A few minutes later he came in and pulled out a chair. He didn't speak right away, took a sip of tea, a bite of avocado. Then unexpectedly he turned to her and said, "Shall we walk around the lake this afternoon? Slow, but let's go." That question needed no reason, not because the weather was nice, not because anyone insisted, but because he felt ready to step out again, no longer weighed down like in previous weeks, no longer worried he'd have to stop midway. His legs may not have grown much stronger, but something inside had softened, grown more confident, all from a slice of soft avocado. And she understood. No big plans, no dramatic changes, just one thing, done right, at the right place, at the right time. Some things can't be put into words, but show clearly in a quiet afternoon, where one avocado slice, simple, small, becomes the gentlest invitation to a journey for two. No need to draft a plan, no need to pin a nutrition chart on the fridge. Just start with tomorrow's fruit plate. Look again. Are the items on it still the ones he's eaten for years? A few grapes, a slice of banana, a bit of pineapple. They were all good once, but his body today isn't the same as 10 years ago. So, Try swapping those three with something new, lower in sugar, gentler on acid, and richer in understanding. A few blackberries, a slice of avocado with flaxseed, some soft, ripe pear. No need to force it, no need to explain. Just place it on the table, the same way you place your love each day, quietly but never missing. Then watch. Not just the fruit plate changing, but the way he looks when stepping down the stairs, the initiative when he walks into the garden, the lightness when he invites you for an evening stroll. Have you ever changed a dish and changed something in the heart of the one you love? If yes, share it in the comments below. If not, maybe try starting tomorrow morning. Because, who knows, maybe just one slice of avocado, one berry, one small choice could be the start of a longer journey together.